All right, and welcome back to another edition live at Drew's house. How's everybody doing out there? We are quickly moving through July. Unbelievable. Thank you for all your support with the show here over the last few months as we continue to roll through from the kitchen here, which is unique. Someday we'll be back in the studio, I think, but I don't know. It's going to be a little while for us, although this is going well. I like the whole vibe of the kitchen. So no Sarah today. It's just going to be me. I know that upsets many of you. I get the text messages when she's not on, but coffee mug cheers from myself. There we go. And I'm very excited about the first show of this week. It is something I've been trying to do for a little while here, getting a police officer on the show. Of course, that is not an easy job right now since the killing of George Floyd. And several other incidents as well. But of course, we're now in the midst of a defund the police movement. And as you can imagine, being a police officer, not the easiest job in the world right now. So I've been trying to get a police officer on. And I will tell you that a lot of them had said no to me. I know quite a few. And I was getting a lot of quick no's. But I'm going to be joined by police officer Scott Frost today. He's a union president. And he's going to be nice enough to jump on here and talk with us. So I don't really know Scott too well, but I'm thrilled that he's taken a moment to come on the show. We have some mutual, we kind of overlapped on social media a little bit. You hear that so many times these days. And I reached out to him and he said he'd do it. So I'm very excited about that. Have a police officer on the show. Let's bring in Officer Scott Frost. All right, Police Officer Scott Frost joins us now, Union President Scott Frost. How are you? Nice to meet you, sir.
Good, very well. Nice to meet you too, Drew.
Virtually meet you. That's how we're doing it these days, I guess.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Where are you speaking to us from?
I'm home in Beverly.
Beverly. Okay. So you're a North Shore guy like me. I'm in Danvers. Very good. So obviously it's an interesting time to be a police officer right now. There's no doubt about that. Ever since the George Floyd death in Minneapolis and a few other incidents, and now we're in this defund the police movement here. I guess pretty basically a first question would be, what is the life of a police officer right now? It has changed a lot over the last few months, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think overall it's been pretty demoralizing. I think the way we're looking at it right now, it's a tough environment to be working in. We have the support of most of the people, but it's been really difficult over the past couple of months. We've been under a lot of fire, a lot of criticism, and it's just been a tough time, to be honest with you.
Can you feel that on the streets? I mean, I don't know, whatever. I think only a police officer would know, but can you feel that kind of that real tangible view towards police officers when you're working on the beat?
Honestly, no. For I've been here, I've been uninjured for a couple months, but from the guys on the street, what they've been saying is like on details, people come up like supporting them. I know for the most part, the majority of the public does support us. We've had quite a bit of support from the local communities. So overall, I don't think we're seeing it at the local level, but I think overall we're seeing from like the legislature, the state senate, the politicians, that's where we're really not seeing it. It's really starting to affect morale too.
It's starting to affect morale because it's interesting. I gave you, before you came on, I gave you some credit for coming on here. I know several police officers in several different communities as well. And I reached out to them trying to get them on, and a lot of them just didn't want to do it. There was a little bit of frustration too of we're just not doing the interviews right now. It's a tough time to be working this, and I'm just not interested, Drew. I'm sorry. So first of all, thank you for doing it. But there was definitely a lot of that frustration that came back at me just trying to find a police officer to come on the show.
I think it's important to talk about. And like I said, for the most part, the majority of the community really supports us. I think the most frustrating part is seeing like the politicians at the federal and state level, especially for the state senate, the whole qualified immunity thing, they have a lot to do with morale. And I think that's one of the big things with it.
Let's get back to that in a moment, the little bit more into the defund the police and what just went down on Beacon Hill and all that. I do want to make a point. We had, when the George Floyd thing, I haven't spoken, like I said, I know a lot of police officers. I haven't really spoken to anybody who thought there was really anything good that happened with those Minneapolis police officers. I mean, all these police officers pretty much unanimously have said everything wrong, and I just wonder, what is the talk within the department when they see bad police action like that? Because your job was not made easier. It was made a whole lot harder by that situation. What is the talk within the department when something like that happens?
Well, I think it's not within the department, but overall as a profession, I think everyone agrees that was an awful thing that happened. And what's upsetting for us, I think as a profession, is we all agree it was wrong. And it's a time to move forward with some good reform. And what's happened at this point, it's just, we've been left out of the reform now, the issues, as far as like creating reform. But like overall, I think everyone, including the police unions, the police officers across the country, are on board saying that was a horrible thing that happened. Never should have happened. That guy deserves to be prosecuted for murder. And that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, when something like that happens, in my lifetime, I can't really remember one that has rippled across the country so quickly. I mean, every department immediately felt it in this country that, okay, things have turned against the police here a little bit. And I know you say you still feel the support on the streets, but there was a definite feeling that I had never seen before of people started looking at police officers a little bit differently. And I know that is not easy to go to work every day with that.
Oh, 100%. The way we feel, we're being judged by the actions of a couple of people in that. And I think that's the hardest part. It was 1,000 miles away. And we absolutely condemn that. I think as a profession, we're disgusted by it. And we agree with the public. We agree with the protesters. And I think that's the hardest part. It's just kind of being lumped in. And all of a sudden, the knee-jerk reactions, like we're seeing right now from the state Senate to the federal politicians, I think that's the hardest part, is us being judged by the actions of those 3 or 4 guys that did that unconscionable thing.
Let's get into that a little bit now too, because I know you mentioned qualified immunity and a couple things. This whole defund the police movement is. I have made the point that I think it's kind of a poor name, because I think a lot of people within that defund the police movement are not saying, let's get rid of police officers, stop playing police officers. I mean, there's some extremists, but in general, it's about, reallocating money. I wonder, from a police officer's point of view, are there parts of that movement that you say, you know what, okay, we can get on board with that? Or what is the view of a police officer on this whole movement?
Oh yeah, like as far as training, de-escalation training is paramount. I don't think any police officer in this state or country would absolutely be upset about having de-escalation training. It's going to keep us from getting injured, kind of make us work with the public. And we actually do quite a bit of de-escalation training right now. And to me, it's paramount. So we are 100% on board with that. We're on board with more training. Even with the Accreditation Commission, making us more professional. We're 100% on board with that. The qualified immunity thing, though, is something that's real scary for us. And that's one of the big issues that we're having problems with right now.
Yeah. Explain why that puts a police officer in such a tough situation, because I think a lot of people are still trying to get their heads around a lot of this stuff.
Sure. I think it's the being open to more lawsuits and personally. Another thing is we have to make split-second decisions on the street. I've been involved in wrestling matches. I've been assaulted on the job. And that's one of the things. If I have to defend myself and someone gets hurt, then I'm going to have to worry about my whole family getting sued, basically being bankrupted by this. And it really does it. It actually affects the good cops as well as the bad cops. And I think we all can agree that bad cops don't believe in this job, or they don't belong in this job. All right, and I have no problem with them, but the problem is it's going to be a huge flood of lawsuits. And that's what we're afraid of. It's going to get attorneys getting sued for everything. So if we get a wrestling match and injure someone, if we're involved in a medical response, we hit someone, things like that, it's really going to handcuff us on the job. And it's going to affect the good officers. And there are a lot more good officers than bad officers out there.
When you do, I think we all realize that, I think in every profession, you have people that are, better than others at the job. It's just obviously more to the focal point when you're a police officer, because those mistakes can many times either cause serious injury or be deadly, like we saw in Minneapolis. We also saw it in, let's put it this way. Let's look at the Minneapolis situation. I know we say I think a lot of people were so perturbed and just so frustrated and angry. Angry is really the word about Minneapolis, because not only the officer who ended up putting his knee on George Floyd's neck, but there were 3 other officers right there. And I think it goes to maybe a lot of people calling for more training, and maybe how did these three officers not know to step in there? And I know there was talk that at least one of them might have said something, but that clearly wasn't enough in this situation. And I wonder your thoughts on police training and how it relates to that situation too. Is there enough training? I know that some of those officers were just 2 years on the beat, your take.
There's not enough training. We could always use more training. And unfortunately, we probably get about 40 hours a year. And the problem is with the budgets, most towns are bare bone budgets. Most training budgets are bare bones. We want more training. We welcome training. But the problem is it's just trying to schedule it, trying to pay for it. But absolutely, there could be a ton more training. And I think pretty much every police officer in this country agreed that that was wrong. And training could have helped that. And like I said, there's just no excuse for that. And really, when I saw that was the same thing. Even I said to my wife, it's going to be a tough couple months for our profession at this time.
That's interesting. So I wasn't even expecting you to say that. So as a union president, you say we definitely need more training as police officers.
110%. I teach at the academy also. I've been teaching for 6 or 7 years. We absolutely need more training. The thing is, we get criminal law training, firearms training, constitutional law training. We probably get about 40 hours a year, which is pretty much what everybody gets in this state. We absolutely could use more training. Like de-escalation training is huge. As a department, we've done quite a bit of de-escalation training. I've been through the 40-hour crisis intervention training, which is good deal with mental health and de-escalation, and that should absolutely be mandatory. We absolutely need more training.
So again, we're joined here by police officer Scott Frost, a union president, nice enough to jump on here and speak with us a little bit and kind of give us an idea from a police officer's point of view here, the where we're at. And really, it's a tough time because you're in a pandemic too. I'm sure COVID-19 hasn't made life easier. I mean, you want to give me a little insight on that? Just some of the normal everyday procedures have changed, like every police.
No, it's been awful. Like I said, I've been out injured since it happened, but I deal a lot with the union. I got to say, our chief has been great. We've been in constant contact, but it has changed quite a bit. Like the stress level was unbelievable back in March and April. Just talking to guys, hearing what was going on in the street. This is the first time I've ever seen guys really terrified in this job. They're afraid to bring home to their families. I've heard of instances where guys were like staying in hotels for a month or so. It was a terrifying time. And then to have this happen on top of it, it's been a tough 3 or 4 months.
I bet. I've had a couple of members of the NAACP on just to get that perspective too, because again, you try to talk to as many people as you can to hear all the points of views on this. And one of the points that I know that the NAACP has been making was that they just nationwide, so many of these police officers, I think the officer in Minneapolis too, had all these violations on that record that, maybe he was penalized for, but was still on the beat and was able to do that. What are your thoughts on a situation like that? I mean, I'm sure mistakes are made on the job where, you get ticked and maybe you get suspended, whatever. But does that whole penalized reinforcements, does there need to be a closer look at, that was a bad penalty. Maybe we have to look at taking this officer off the beat. Is enough of that going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a pattern that you see emerging. As a good law enforcement officer, 99.9% of us go out to do the right thing. So I think if you see a pattern emerging, we have an early warning system they can use, and then it can go from there. So obviously, if you're seeing a large pattern, you're seeing a long-standing pattern of abuse or something like that, I think you'd say the same thing. Anyone that works in the street is going to want to work with that guy and is going to want that guy removed.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what you have to look at sometimes too is you also get a lot of complaints from people that just don't like being told what to do, people that get tickets. So I think you have to see sustained complaints and patterns and things like that. But that means, I think if you see a pattern, bring in the early warning system. I think that'll work great.
I think that's a fair point. Give me an idea too. Something that stuck with me that you said earlier is what people don't understand is that so many times you're making last quick decisions just that have to be made in a split second. And feel free to use some examples from your career if you'd like. But I think that is something that you can't really relate to. I know I can't unless you've worked that job, unless you've been in those moments. Give me an idea of what those split second decisions are like, making them in real time.
It's difficult. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head where I've had to make a split second decision. But I've been assaulted on this job. I've been through some pretty tense situations, like domestics, things like that. We're making that split-second decision. And it really is. You literally have had a second to make a decision. But obviously, if you see a pattern like poor decisions being made over a certain period of time, then I think you have an issue. And that's where the early warning system could trigger.
Yeah. Did you, I think one of the ones I remember post George Floyd, I think one of the ones that people might have had I heard a lot of this being floated around, and I don't know what your take on the Atlanta situation was with that situation with Rashard Brooks. Because he ends up with a police officer's taser, which I think at that point a police officer is obviously in a very tough situation. You have a taser taken off you and being, used against you or potentially used against you. I think what the other side of that was, police officers were called to this parking lot and there was a man, sleeping in the parking lot, not driving. Isn't the police officer's job when they get there to make sure everybody leaves that situation alive? And then when the police officers got there, that it didn't end up being the case. I'm just wondering what your whole take is on that. I think there's a lot to it. I think there's 45 minutes of back and forth discussions, and then it doesn't end well, and obviously ends with a man's life being lost. But what was your take on Atlanta? Because I feel like a lot of people they see George Floyd and they say, no bones about it. Terrible police work. Officers should be, like you said, should be convicted of murder. Atlanta seems a little bit not as unanimous when I speak to people around locally and really around the country. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so as far as the shooting itself, I don't feel comfortable talking about that.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't have all the facts. I haven't seen all the videos, so I don't feel comfortable talking about that. What I do feel comfortable about, though, is when people say, well, they could have given him a ride home, they could have brought him to detox. And that's where it gets really difficult, because what happened if they didn't drive him home? They took him to detox. He drove next week, was impaired, and killed someone. Then the police will be held liable for it. And as far as the beginning of that, those guys did a nice job. They talked to him. They tried to de-escalate him. It was actually a cordial conversation. They were going to take him into custody, which they should have. And then after that, I think we all know what happened after that. I really don't feel comfortable talking about the shooting part of it. I just think let the courts deal with that at this point.
What is the general, let's talk a little more general. I understand not wanting to get into the specifics of that, but that sort of situation, I'm sure every officer has come upon that where, there's something going on in the corner over there in the corner of a parking lot and, not a problem at the moment, but could be. Can you guys come check it out? I'm sure that is a call that you guys get maybe every weekend. I'm not sure. What is the general mindset of a police officer when they go into that situation? Obviously, your guard is up a little bit because you don't know what you're walking into. But what is like the goal of the police officer when they enter a situation like that generally?
Are you talking about the George Floyd thing, or just have like a
just any? Let's say there is a car and somebody's sleeping in it. I mean, what is the general goal of going to that situation? And as a police officer, I mean, are you looking to just see what's up, knock on the window? I'm trying to get the sense of what a police officer is thinking as they walk into that situation.
Yeah, every situation is different. I mean, I think we're first of all just going to see if the person's okay, what's going on with them, if they're okay. And then if they're just sleeping in the car, they're fine. Obviously, if they're sleeping in the car, we smell alcohol and they're impaired, we have an action that we have to take. I mean, the thing about letting him sleep in the car, if he sleeps in the car and he drives away and hits someone, we're going to get sued. If we just bring him to a detox or bring him to the hospital, drive him home, he goes out and drives again next week, we're back in the same boat with it. So, I mean, we do have an obligation to protect society. So like I said, if he was sleeping, if someone's sleeping in the car, they're fine. They're ready to go. Yeah.
Do you think there's with these protests that are going on, obviously that's throw that into the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's a recipe that makes this profession extremely difficult right now. With all these protests going on, I was there covering one in Boston, one of the bigger ones. And let's put it this way, it was a lot different than the one that happened in my town of Danvers. The Boston one was obviously a lot more people, but I noticed a lot more anger directed towards police. I mean, just stuff that I would never yell at at another human being. It was being yelled in many cases. Not all the protesters. I don't want to make it a lot of protests. People protest for different reasons, and I think that's one of the problems with a lot of these protests is you got people kind of with different mindsets. But I just noticed that police were put in a tough position, even in Boston. And I wonder how tough that is, standing guard, standing in line in one of those situations where, I mean, you really can't act on it, because if you act on it, you're going to start something with this whole mass of people that you don't want to do. What is the protest mindset as a police officer, I guess is my question.
Thankfully, I haven't been involved in those protests. I've spoken to some guys that have. I think it's hard for them, but you have to remember, they're insulting the job and the uniform. They're not insulting you personally, and you have to remove yourself from that and not take it personally. It's like the first few weeks at Academy, screaming and yelling in your face. You have the drill instructors there, and you basically just don't take it personal in one or not the other. Let them say their piece and let them vent. And I think that's probably the best way to do it. And I think for the most part, too, I think if you saw the officers in Boston, did a really good job. And they basically just kind of sat there and took the abuse. And like, verbal abuse isn't going to hurt you. You know, so I think at some point you just have to sit back and let them vent and say their piece.
That's interesting. I've never heard that before either. Is that something that pretty much all officers take? You know, when you're getting something, you're getting a stranger like that yelling at you, they're not yelling at you personally. That's the mindset. You're yelling at the uniform or whatever the cause is.
Yeah, I think most of us believe that. And that's one of the things when I teach at Academy, I always try and tell new recruits, don't take it personal. Because you're going to react, you're going to do something stupid, it could be out of a great career and out of a great job. You know, and don't let them get under your skin. It's just like the drill instructors, just shake your head yes, in one ear and out the other, and just don't take it personal. You know, it's the badge that they're insulting. It's not you personally.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And so you're a teacher. I mean, there's probably no better person to talk to about police tactics than you. Obviously, is the chokehold, I mean, that's been obviously because of George Floyd has gotten so much attention. Can it be, is there any time when it is an effective police tactic, or is it really something that you think should be taken out of the police criteria?
I think, speaking for myself, I don't want to get into like departments or statewide policy or anything like that, but I think if you're basically in the thing where at the bottom of a pile or you're at the bottom of a fight, you might have to use it at some point if it's going to be life or death situation. But in my 20-something years of doing this job, I've never seen it used in a call. You know,
really?
So maybe it's like a life or death thing. If you have to go to a firearm, you can't get your firearm, it may be a way to save your life. But as far as like a general thing, I can honestly say I've never seen it used.
Really? That's interesting. How about like tactics in general? Has this whole, I mean, it's tough because I know so many of these things have happened in other cities that have drawn attention to all these movements, but has it made every single police department, every single teacher kind of reevaluate how they teach young police officers coming up?
No, we've always taught them pretty much the same way. We don't teach them to go through chokeholds and beat people. Even in the academy, the training is pretty good. You know, we teach people to be respectful. Obviously, if you have to use force, there's a time and a place for it. But I don't really think it's changed how we're going to teach. We're going to teach guys to go out there and do the job, just be respectful of people. And obviously, you have to defend yourself at some point. But I think what has changed is just with the cameras and perception, there's going to be a lot more careful with that.
Interesting. I wonder, how about you spoke very clearly about how you think most police officers are all for more training and they think there should be more, which was very interesting. How about recertification? Because I know that's been a lot of calls of police officers in that job and too comfortable for however many years. I wonder, is that process okay at the moment? Is that being blown out of proportion, or does there need to be another look at that?
No, I think if it's done right, it's not a problem. Unfortunately, what happened with the state Senate, they didn't want us to have any input on it. So I think that was the biggest issue with it. So we have no problem with it. But the problem is, I don't want some person that's never been a police officer, never worked the street, never been under the stress we've been under with, trying to judge me 2 or 3 years after and say, well, he's not going to be certified because of this. You know, so I think that's the issue. But I think if we had some police input with it, we had like a good board overseeing it, it was done fairly, and there's an appeals process, I think it's a great idea. But the only problem is, if you go get decertified without having an appeal or trying to defend yourself, I think that's a big issue with it. Because we have to deal with people in stressful situations, times we're making a split-second decision. Now we're going to have somebody 6 months down the line saying, well, you should have done this and this. But they've had 3 or 4 hours to look what I did. I had probably less than a second to make that decision. You know, but overall, I think it's going to be decent if it's done right, and I think we have no problem with it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me as well. Again, we're joined here by police officer Scott Frost and a union president. Has it been strange for you to see all the, because I mean, even in like I said, I'm from Danvers. I saw a protest here, which is just kind of small town Danvers. I know you're a North Shore guy too. They're living in Beverly. I think Beverly had a few as well. Pretty much all these communities. Has that been a little bit strange to watch from the police officer's perspective? Because I mean, I know everybody always grows up, and if you have an emergency, you're the people you call. You're the ones you want to be there quickly. Has it been strange to see a little bit of that pushback towards officers? It can't be a natural thing for officers.
It has a little bit, but overall, I think the community still supports us. They just want to see reforms. Like, I don't blame them for wanting to see reforms. We like to see reforms too. So it has been a little bit strange, but overall, I think we still have respect in most of the communities. They're still going to call us when they need us. We're still going to respond and act professionally. So it's not something that we take personal.
Do you think maybe I heard some analyst, it might have been another union chief from another city, say if one thing comes out of all this is that police officers, the good ones, may see the bad cop acting and be quicker to jump on that and be quicker to call that cop out. I wonder, do you think that's a possible, and maybe there's enough of that going on anyway. I don't want to make it seem like that's not already done. I understand that is already done, but maybe just now, if there's something borderline, you know what, I'm going to stand up and say something where maybe I wouldn't before.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing, it's always been done. What's happened is I think the media and the press have kind of taken a perception that's not close to reality. I gotta say, like, if I was at work, and even 10, 12 years ago, if you ever saw someone whacking someone around or beating someone, you'd pull them off of them. The whole thin blue line thing is one of the biggest perceptions out there that I disagree with. We don't sit there and cover for each other. It's never been done. And if you have a rogue officer, I'll tell you right now, other officers aren't going to put up with them. And it's been like that since the 20 plus years I've been on. So it's one of those things, I think it's always happened. Obviously, there are going to be some instances where it doesn't happen. You're not going to see that in this state. I think we're lucky they're trained in the other states, but it's just something you're not going to see. I'll be honest with you. I think if it happened 10 or 15 years ago at the local level or Massachusetts, you would have seen them happen now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. This is not some simple brush, right? I mean, it does differ from community, state to state. I think that's important to note too, because this whole nationwide, police as one big veiled umbrella really doesn't work. It does vary where you go, correct?
Oh, absolutely, it does. Like I said, Mass. You look at Florida. Florida, you can go down there, get a job making like $15, $16 an hour. No education, they'll just hire you. You go to like the Midwest, you get hired like that. Mass is a lot higher to get hired. We have a civil service system. You have to take a test, extensive psychological screening, tough interviews. We have a field training process they have to go through, a year probationary period. So Mass is a lot different. And I'll actually say New England's the same thing. Like, you don't see this happening in Massachusetts, New Hampshire. It doesn't happen as much.
And that being said, you still think that more training is needed, and that 110%, I think you said that we still need to do more. All that being said, so that tells you where the other states are at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can always use more training. And I think pretty much every police officer in the state would say the same thing. Yeah. Look at the training that I've been through, the crisis intervention training, procedural justice, de-escalation. That's helped me a lot in my job. I'm almost 49. I got 3 kids. I got 11 years to go. The last thing I do is rest around with some 18, 19-year-old kid. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to get permanently disabled. And I think pretty much every police officer is on that same page. Like, we're not looking out to go out and wrestle. We want to de-escalate. We don't want to get hurt.
Yeah, I wonder too. You mentioned that with the training, a lot of times, like I think in Minneapolis, I believe at least one of those officers was like just under 2 years on the beat. Are there moments where just the nature of how the system is constructed that you're about to send somebody out on the force as a newly trained police officer, and you wish you had, maybe I wish I had 6 more months with that officer because that man or that woman is not quite ready? Are there moments like that where there have been officers put out there and you feel like I just wish I had 6 more months with them?
Speaking for myself, I've never seen it. I know most of the departments have a pretty extensive field training program. If they're not making muster, they'll extend it. So around here, I don't think you'll see that. I know the state police also have a pretty extensive field training program. The same thing, if someone's not progressing, they'll extend it, then at some point they'll terminate them. So I don't think you're going to see that out here. I don't think any department of the right mind is going to send them out for liability reasons. Plus, if they're going to get hurt, they're going to get someone else hurt.
Yep.
And the field training, that I'm sorry.
No, I get that. What's the I kind of want to end with this too, because one thing that stuck with me from the beginning here that you said was like the emotional toll that this has all taken on families. I don't think a lot of people think about that. A police officer removing himself or herself from their own family because they're in fear and staying at hotels. And I think part of that was because of the pandemic you mentioned too. I'm assuming, is that some of that from the protest, or did you mean strictly from pandemic?
As far as removing themselves from the families, that was from the pandemic.
Okay.
I think guys are terrified to bring this home to their families.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've done this job a long time, and guys are legitimately terrified with this thing. It was a pretty scary time to be a police officer, even like a fireman or a paramedic. I got a lot of friends on all three services. It was a pretty terrifying time.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what situations you're walking into, and let's face it, in a lot of those situations, people aren't thinking social distancing, right? I mean, that's not you go into a heated situation, that's not what these people are thinking, right?
Oh, absolutely. And obviously we go on medicals, everything else, but like going on domestics or something like that, we have an obligation to go in. And usually if husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend involved in a fight, I think the last thing I think about is a mask.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's been a crazy 2020. Let's put it that way, all across the country. And I think so many people have really mixed emotions because they hate. And I mean, everybody has seen. You mentioned, the media playing the videos of George Floyd. Everybody has seen that a million times now. They've seen Rashard Brooks in Atlanta a million times now, and I think it's so easy to forget how the officers that do such great. I mean, you think back to like the Boston Marathon. I mean, the officers were getting standing ovations in Watertown for, defending the city and throwing themselves in a tough situation with terrorists on the run. And it's interesting to see people struggle with this whole thing. What is the message that you would like to get out to the everyday person from a police officer's perspective of what do police officers really want to say that they're just not having the platform to say right now to the public?
No, I think we all take this job. We enjoy the job. We want to help people. We're best in the communities. I look at most of the guys I work with, their parents, their coaches, their kids go to Danvers schools, they're friends with Danvers residents. I volunteer in Beverly for the youth football. I do a lot for my community and my neighbors, everything like that. So we're just citizens, is what we are. And we're out there to do the right thing. And like any job, you have a couple bad apples. It makes our job harder. We don't like those people. But overall, I think we're going in there to do the right thing. We don't go in there like, so we're going to wrestle people and fight people. We go in there just trying to help people. And that's what 99% of the guys do. And I think that's the biggest thing. And as far as training, we're on board with the training. We're on board with reform. We want to make the profession better, make it better trained. We just want some input with it. We're just out there to do the right thing. And I think any police officer goes against that should be a police officer.
From Beacon Hill to Capitol Hill, where do you hope to see things in 3 months? What changes would you like to see? Is it just a matter of being heard more? Is it just a matter of governors and representatives listening? What would you like to see?
Yeah, honestly, I think the politicians and media support us, support the good ones too, because all you see is the negative things. And I don't know how many police officers there are across the country, but all we're seeing is maybe those 30 or 40 bad ones. Probably 30 or 40 of those bad ones, you got guys doing great things every day. I look for the guys I work with in Danvers, the guys that train the academy, the Beverly police officers. They do so much good during the day, whether it's going on psych calls, medical calls. They go above and beyond, and it's just never recognized. And it's tough. All we see is the bad. Concentrate on the good. We do a lot of good for the community. We're all out there to do the right thing. We're out there to serve the community. Just give us the peace.
And it must be a tough time, because I can imagine you're going into a lot of these situations, even if you know what you're doing is by the book training, you're probably just giving it a second thought now because of the atmosphere of what we're living in right now.
Oh, absolutely we are. Definitely. And with the whole qualified immunity thing, that's going to make guys even triple think. it's going to be really tough. And that's what we're afraid of is somebody may hesitate, someone may get hurt, because this is a real thing. You might go to work and get hurt. I've been hurt 3 times on the job. I've been out now for several months with a knee injury. I tore ligaments in my thumb. I've had stitches in my hand. So it's a real thing. You can actually get hurt in this job. And that's the thing. I think the politicians, the people need to realize is, it's a tough job that we have. You're making split-second decisions in stressful situations, But on the flip side, we do a lot of good work too, like not police work. I've got to put light bulbs in for people. I've done put batteries in a TV remote for someone. There's people calling them at 3 in the morning. They have nobody else to call. And we do stuff that people don't even think of. Like
You've been called for a remote? You've been called for a television remote?
Yeah, there's an elderly lady. And she couldn't figure out a television remote. So we actually went and put batteries in it. I have a new guy was field training. We actually changed a light bulb for an elderly lady. We do all kinds of stuff like that.
Those have to be the 2 wildest calls. I've never heard those before.
Oh, all the time. We do
really
weird stuff like that, but we enjoy it. We don't mind it. If it was my grandmother, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, who else are you going to call? And that's one of those things we don't mind doing.
That is hilarious. Very interesting. Well, Officer Scott Frost, it has been great talking with you. Do you mind if we end with a quick rapid fire? We always have to do this on our show. We like to meet the people we're speaking to. So just completely random questions. Got to answer first thing. All right. Favorite musician?
Oh. U2.
All right. Favorite movie?
Breakfast Club.
Favorite quarantine activity?
Oh boy. I'd say drinking, but I'll get in trouble. Playing YouTube.
I've read a study the other day about the how time has just gone out the window and people are admitting to doing. Never mind. We won't get into that.
I don't want to incriminate myself.
Favorite. Let's see. Favorite class in school?
History.
History. Favorite city to visit?
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Red Sox games in Baltimore. I like that trip.
I've been a few times.
Yeah, it's great. Beautiful ballpark. Red Sox start this week. That'll be nice to have baseball back. And last but not least, most rewarding thing about being a police officer?
Just helping people. I think I really enjoy it. It's like a sense of satisfaction with the job. So I guess that's my favorite thing.
All right. Very good rapid fire. How's the knee? How'd you hurt it? What's the recovering okay?
Yeah, I was in a foot chase, went off a curb. Not my most glamorous moment. I tore the cartilage by my knee. So I had surgery back in January. And I go back to the doctor tomorrow to see what the next step is.
Okay. So you went down in a foot chase, you said?
Oh, yeah, right off a curb. Not my most glamorous moment.
Oh, man. Well, I'm sorry. I hope you're recovering okay. But, well, anyways, I'm sure. I'm guessing when you go down by curb, the guys let you hear about that one a little bit, huh? The guys and the women?
Oh, yeah. I was right in front of about 30 or 40 people, too. Everyone flying, so pretty embarrassing.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, thank you for the good work you do. I appreciate you really coming on because, like I said, there's been a lot of I wouldn't say resistance. I mean, it's all been respectful, but it has been resistance to come on and do these interviews. There's no bones about that. Just because police officers are finding it a tough culture to work in and a tough culture to do these interviews in. I appreciate you very much taking the time, and I think it's good to hear this point of view from a police officer, and I just think it's really good. So I appreciate you coming on and doing it. Officer Scott Frost, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate your time also. Thank you.
Have a great day, and we'll talk to you again, all right?
All right, sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, good stuff there with Police Officer Scott Frost, Union President. Hope you all enjoyed that. I've been meaning to try to do that for a while, just get the police officer's point of view. And we've been trying to represent as many sides as we can here on this show. I know we had the NAACP on a couple times. We had some protest organizers on a couple times. And it didn't feel right doing a lot of that without having a police officer on too and talking about a lot of the stress that they're under and a lot of the jobs that they've had to do here through this tough time. So that's kind of the point of it. And I was glad that Officer Scott Frost was able to do that for us. Like I said, it was really hard getting a police officer on this show. I think maybe because of some of the past guests that we have had on as well. I don't think that necessarily helps when you're representing one side, which is why I'm saying get out there and say your message. And Officer Scott Frost took that baton and came on here and answered our questions and made me learn a few things that even I didn't know. So take that as you wish. I think, clearly as he said, he acknowledges there are bad cops out there. He acknowledges more trainings needed in a lot of cases, but the majority of cops are good ones. And I think it's clear to me that he is one of them. And I hope you realize that too. And I hope you got something out of that. So another edition live from Drew's house. I think that was a fun one. One of the better ones and one of the more informative ones for me anyway. Hope you enjoyed it. So we will see you next time, folks. All right. Hopefully with Sarah next time. She's been a few shows out now. So hopefully we can get her back in the mix here quickly. We're kind of bouncing around, summertime travel and all that, trying to catch up on stuff. So the shows keep coming though. All right. Live at Drew's house, another edition. Bye-bye. Big thanks to Officer Scott Frost. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time, everybody. All right. Bye-bye now.